this difficult time as we also honor his service. Now, I'd like to introduce Kenneth Korn, the Vice President of the Board of Directors for the Veteran History Museum of the Carolinas in Brevard, North Carolina. He's joined us today to introduce our honorees. So please join me in welcoming Ken to the stage.
All right, such a great honor to be here with all our American heroes right here. Let's give them a round of applause before we even start. Yeah, good job, guys. All right, so we're going to start with our first honoree, and our first honoree today is Mr. Billy Boyd. Mr. Boyd entered into the U.S. Maritime Service at the age of 17. He was an ordinary seaman on the T-2 tanker, the SS Golden Hill. Later, he served on the Liberty ship, the SS William Rayburn. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Billy Boyd to the front of the stage. All right. And our next honoree is Mr. Louis Simfisi. Mr. Simfisi joined the U.S. Maritime Service at the age of 16, and he forged his parents' signature just to do so. He also served in Korea and Vietnam. Thank you, Mr. Simfisi. And our next honoree is Mr. William Fahini. Mr. Fahini was sent to the South Pacific as a Kings Point cadet. He was eventually drafted into the U.S. Navy and was commissioned, and he was a lieutenant when he retired. Please welcome Mr. Fahini. All right, and our next honoree is Mr. James Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay spent 4 years in the Merchant Mariner service. During World War II, he served on an Alcoa Master, the John W. Davis, the Percy E. Foxworth, and then he joined the U.S. Army Air Corps. He didn't have enough, and he spent 23 years in the Air Corps. All right, let's give it up for Mr. Lindsay. Very nice. All right, and now our next honoree is Mr. Charles Mills. Charles Mills began his maritime career in 1937. Think about that. He started it in 1937, and he climbed aboard the gangway of the SS Carleton. He sailed throughout the entire war and is a charter member of the National Maritime Union. Please join me in welcoming Mr. James Mills. All right, and our next honoree is Mr. John Nelson. Mr. Nelson served aboard 2 U.S. Army hospital ships, the Lewis A. Milne and the Larkspur. Following that, and for a majority of his World War II service, he served aboard 2 U.S. Army transport ships, the Wabash Victory and the Bridgeport. Please join me in welcoming Mr. John Nelson to the front of the stage. All righty, and our next honoree is Mr. Maxwell Nelson. Mr. Nelson trained in St. Petersburg, then in Fort Trumbull, New London, Connecticut, as a third engineer. At the age of 22, he was aboard the SS Day Star, and he was an oiler on the SS Sweetwater and the SS Sandsport. Please give a round of applause to Mr. Nelson. All right, and our next honoree is Mr. Lawrence Nanink. Mr. Nanink trained at the U.S. Maritime Service Training Station in Avalon, California. In 1945, he was assigned to a brand new ship, the SS Glenn's Ferry, which headed to the Philippines carrying 6 million gallons of gasoline, a floating bomb right there. He completed his service in 1947. Let's give it up for Mr. Nanink. All right. Our next honoree is Mr. George Offenhauser. Mr. Offenhauser trained at Catalina Island, and then he shipped out during the war on the SS Plattsburgh, a T-2 tanker. And he also served on the SS Wabash Victory. Please join me in welcoming George Offenhauser to the front of the stage. All right, and our next honoree is Mr. Mark Oncall. Mr. Oncall was only 15 years old when he enlisted. He served a full year taking German and Italian POWs to and from Egypt. He served aboard the John P. Harris, the Walter Forward, and the Waterbury Victory ship. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mark Oncall to the front of the stage. All right, and our next honoree is Mr. Julian Smith. Mr. Smith worked in the galley aboard the SS Henry D. Whitten at the age of 18. And in January 1944, he joined the Merchant Marine, missing the last 5 months of high school. He worked in deck departments as both a seaman and a helmsman, and he gave a great story this morning at breakfast about being a helmsman. And he served in 3 different war zones. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Julian Smith to the front of the stage. All right, and our next honoree is Mr. Donald Spirier. Mr. Spirier started his maritime training at Kings Point, New York, and then he went on to be deployed aboard a brand new T-2 tanker as part of a convoy to Britain. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Spirier to the front of the stage. All right. And our final honoree of tonight, Mr. Harold Wellington, my personal friend. It's just such an honor to be here with Mr. Wellington. Mr. Wellington completed basic training at Sheepshead Bay. He served in the Merchant Marine from 1942 to 1946. After his World War II service, he went on to sail aboard ships that supplied Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Please welcome my personal friend, Mr. Harold Wellington, to the front of the stage. Yes, sir. All right, and one more big round of applause to these American heroes. Yeah.